Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Barbados Association of Professional Engineers monthly webinar series. This is a CPD event. That is, it is a continuous professional development event. It carries a value of 2 CPD points. Please contact our secretariat to have your CPD information forwarded to you should you wish to claim those points for your professional designation. Just some housekeeping. Please note that these sessions are ran as follows. We will introduce our presenter. In this case, we are having an interview, and that is going to run for between 20 and 40 minutes. We will then have an open session to our general audience, where you, the general audience, will be able to engage our guests by asking some questions. This is done by either raising your hand, at which time the moderator will acknowledge you and invite you to ask your question. Alternatively, you can post your question in the chat, and the moderator will ask the question on your behalf. We ask that you please mute any electronic device that you may be using that is not involved in what you're doing in terms of when you log on to answer questions, etc. Tonight, we are honored to have a chat with Mr. Bjorn Bjerkhamn. I should say engineering fellow Bjorn Bjerkhamn. And he is here this evening to sit and chat and share with us from his vast years of experience and to impart some knowledge as a professional engineer to our fellow members and to those who are members of the building construction engineering fraternity. Before we get the interview going, just some quick notices from your BAP organization. I just want to remind everyone that we have the annual general meeting, which will be coming up in November. So we ask that you continue to monitor your emails and so on and keep an eye out for that. And we'd ask that you would make the effort to attend. We will confirm the format that meeting will be taken, and you will see information coming out to you in due course. Also, I want to remind members that we have the annual awards dinner that will be coming up in early December. And for those of you who are interested in partnering with us as a sponsor, we ask that you please reach out to Stacy at the BAPE office, and we can make arrangements where you could be recognized as one of our sponsors for this event for this year. Next month, our webinar, or one of our webinars next month, will be delivered by the Engineers Registration Board. And they will be walking us through the process of how to register and to become a registered engineer in Barbados. There have been some changes made to the process, which are geared towards making the process more user-friendly, but also to improve the whole aspect of what happens there. So we will have that information out to you shortly. And for those of you who are interested, or if you have a person in your office, or perhaps if you are the parent of somebody that is looking to get into engineering or perhaps pursuing an engineering course, we ask that you jump on that session and get the information that the ERB will be sharing on that particular evening. There's also the construction seminar that is being put on by TVET that is coming up, and we will have several members of BAP participating in that. So we invite you to also participate. That is also an option to obtain continuous professional development points that are on offer for that event over the 2 days. There will be some information being shared tomorrow morning on Good Morning Barbados, and there is information in the press being circulated. So I ask that you avail yourself of those opportunities when they come your way. So this afternoon, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be chatting with Mr. or rather engineering fellow Bjorn Bjerkhamn. And I'll just give a bit of an introduction. Mr. Bjerkhamn was born in 1944 and immigrated to Barbados from Norway at the tender age of 6 and received his secondary education at the Law School and Harrison College. He subsequently gained a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering at the University of the West Indies, and after graduating, worked briefly for 2 firms before venturing out on his own in the 1970s. As a businessman, he's best known for his business acumen, having created some 40 companies, all leaders in their respective fields. The construction and real estate development sector is one of the island's most important industries. It provides significant employment and is the primary customer of the island's supply distributors. In addition, the sector generates significant vital foreign currency from the sale of real estate to foreign nationals and significantly enhances the island's tourism offering through the development of real estate. Mr. Bjerkhamn was integral in the development of the Jada Group of Companies, the Preconco Group of Companies, and Spring Homes Limited. A bit about his career as a developer. He has an unblemished track record spanning over 4 successful decades in the construction and property sectors in Barbados. Mr. Bjerkhamn has accumulated an unparalleled range of experiences, knowledge, and expertise as a developer or contractor responsible for multiple award-winning tourism-related projects. Estimated to have added more than 1,100 bedrooms to the Barbados villa stock, while generating approximately $1 billion in foreign currency for the country. Mr. Bjerkhamn's stellar list of successful ventures as a developer includes some of the following properties: Port St. Charles Resort and Marina, St. Peter's Bay Resort, Port Ferdinand Resort and Marina, Palazate Beachfront Residences, Nikki Beach, Sapphire Beach Condominiums, Terraces Condominiums, Villas at Heron Court, Schooner Bay Resort, Coral Cove Condominiums, Royal Westmoreland Condominiums, Summerley Development, Portico Condominiums, Schooner Bay Condominiums. Launched in 2022, Mr. Bjerkhamn's latest venture is Coral Beach, a luxury residential development located in the highly regarded parish of St. Peter, and this is located on the island's west coast. Similarly, Mr. Bjerkhamn has devoted considerable effort over the past 51 years in providing affordable housing solutions for Barbadians. The most recent of such projects are the 749-unit affordable income Ridgeland development at the Ridge in Christchurch. He's also been involved with 42-unit affordable home and land development at Whitehall Meadows in St. Peter, the villages at Coverley Christchurch, which is the first zero-lot line housing development in the Caribbean, with a planned 1,024 homes, Emerald Park, St. Philip, Country Park Towers, which was an NHC project, 72-unit at Valerie, which afforded income high-rise development for the NHC, and then the 80-unit Grotto affordable income high-rise development, again for the NHC. Mr. Bjerkhamn has also played a significant role in local infrastructure projects, with the construction of such notable recent projects provided needed national facilities or grade A commercial space needed for private sector growth, such as Barbados Coast Guard Relocation Project, Judicial Center Whitehall, St. Michael, CGI Towers Warrens, St. Michael, Corporate Center of the National Insurance Scheme in Warrens, the Goddard's Building Highgate Hall, Williams Towers in Warrens, St. Luke's Academy Whitehall, and redevelopment of the Archer Hall in Speightstown in St. Peter. Other business accomplishments: the introduction of the zero-lot line housing concept in Barbados, which allows for better land use in the residential sector. Pioneered the precast and prestressed concrete fabrication, which is known as Preconco Limited, which is a world leader in this field. The first joint venture with government to do a tourism development in Barbados, which was the Sapphire Beach Condominiums. The first to design and construct the combined use of commercial and residential building at Summerley. Was one of the founders of the Jolly Roger and later to become the Coastal Cruising and Tall Ships Inc., and is still the largest shareholder in this leader of the tourism sector. As a philanthropist, Mr. Bjerkhamn may be less known to the general public, but he is definitely a visionary businessman, developer, entrepreneur, and is a humanitarian who uses his good fortune and ability to make a difference in the lives of others. To this end, he generously supports a wide cross-section of charitable, educational, sporting, religious, health, and other organizations and community activities. Pertaining to nationals, awards, and recognition, in January 7th, 2004, he was conferred an honor by the government of Barbados for his contribution to the economic development of Barbados. He served as a non-executive director of the Central Bank of Barbados. He was awarded the Silver Crown of Merit in 2017 for his contribution to the development of Barbados. And in 2018, the Barbados Association of Professional Engineers conferred upon him the title of Fellow. Even with this success, Mr. Bjerkhamn is the most down-to-earth person you will ever meet and prefers to stay out of the limelight. With his quiet, commanding presence, he has been able to set his own pace, meticulously doing what he does best: conceive, nurture, and develop new ventures. Mr. Bjerkhamn, welcome to you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good. Let's start off with some questions about your formative years. Can you give us some background in terms of your growing up in Norway and what it was like to, in that time, to migrate across the world and eventually settle in Barbados?
Well, yeah, I was born in Oslo, and I spent the first 5 years of my life in an island in the middle of the Oslo fjord called Malmøya. And from there, my parents decided that they would emigrate to Venezuela because, of course, in Venezuela, you walked around the road and you picked up gold and diamonds and everything at the side of the road. And so it sounded like a good place to go. So we went. Unfortunately, the roads were mud. We lived in a house that actually was constructed with rattan cane plastered with mud. And we stayed there for a year. And at that time, the Venezuelan economy and things tanked, and they were having revolution, and people were getting killed. So my mother took up the three children and trips across to Barbados. Why Barbados, I don't know to this day, but I am very grateful for it because Barbados, people look at me and they say, well, Bjorn, you come from Norway. With a Norwegian passport, you can live anywhere in the world. I say, yeah, but I live where I want to live. Barbados is the best place in the entire world to live, bar none. So there you go.
Okay,
That's how I arrived here.
fantastic. Could you give us some idea during your school life of who some of your contemporaries would have been at that time?
Gosh. Drake Sedgel, who just passed away last week or week before. He was there. There was Prestegard. Busy Williams was there. The whole Webster family from Moncrief, where at the time I was at Lodge, I actually was living in their house, and they very kindly welcomed me into it. And so we ran about the place and did a lot of foolish boys things, but we did have a lot of fun. And when I finally got the lodge at age 16, not really having done any particular schooling before that, it was interesting because Mr. Newsom put me in 3B, and I decided, no, that wasn't working. So I was consistently coming last, as you would expect. I didn't know anything. And I went to him and I said, look, I don't want to continue in the stream. I want to go in 4A. He says, well, uh, prove to me that you can. So in the next mark reading, I came sixth. He called me up at prayers in the morning into his office and told me if I ever came below six, he was going to flog my tail. So that was kind of an incentive. So I did the normal 4A, 5A, and then I decided that school was not where I wanted to be. Too many people ordering you around the place. So I went to Mr. Newsom again and I said, Mr. Newsom, I would like to do my A levels in 1 year. He said, no, 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 no. Nobody does that. You go in lower six, then you go in upper six, and then you sit your A levels. He said, but wait, let me try. And he was obviously a very understanding person because he said yes. So I went and I got my A levels in 1 year, and then I was going to become a veterinary surgeon. I was accepted to the University of Edinburgh. I went up there. Unfortunately, the funds that were promised to me to pay for it never appeared. So university said, well, if you can't pay, you can't study. So I came back to Barbados, worked for a while in Brighton's, the princely sum of $120 a month. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going to go back to university and study something. So I went to Cave Hill and I said, okay, I want to see everything. So I said, okay. So I went through and said, right, I'll become a civil engineer. So they said, hold on, you did the subject to become a vet. You don't have physics at A level. You don't have maths. You don't have well, you don't have the maths or the physics to do it. I said, fine. So what do I do? Yeah, well, you can go to Trinidad, go to university, and have a prelim year. You can do them in, and then off you go. So that's what I did. Went there, went to Trinidad, enjoyed studying, enjoyed carnival, and the Trinidadian girls are very pretty, I have to tell you. I mean, I married two of them, not at the same time, but one after the other. But so I had a great time and came back here, uh, and I had to borrow money from Mr. Lafray of International Constructions because I didn't have enough money to pay. And in those days, it cost $1,000 a year for board and lodging at UE and $288 for tuition. So for $1,288 a year, you could become an engineer. Isn't that wonderful?
Oh, amazing.
I think it's a bit different now. So I became an engineer and spent a long time doing engineering and business, and here I am now.
Fantastic. So, sir, when you returned to Barbados from UWA St. Augustine, who was your first employer and what were your first set of responsibilities?
Well, as I said, I had borrowed money from Mr. Lafray, and I had an agreement with him that I had to come and work for him as an engineer when I qualified until I paid him out, which is perfectly reasonable. So I did. Unfortunately for him, at the same time as I was graduating out of UE, both of his engineers left. One went to Canada and the other one went to Scotland. So when I came there, he had no engineering staff and he had to have an engineer because I tell you, all the big construction that happened in Barbados in those days, they did it. So we had a nice negotiation about now I was no longer just a graduate engineer working there. I was his chief engineer. So that was that. I worked with them for a year. Um, and I built the Duncan O'Neill Bridge in Bridgetown. It's a very interesting engineering thing there because it is made up of a series of beams spanning the careenage, and they were all pre-stressed in order to be able to transport them there. And then they were post-tensioned when in place. And in fact, given a little bit of a camber so that when the buses go across, the bridge actually goes down and comes back up.
Mm.
It was a very interesting job. Then I worked on what at that time was called the financial building, which now is called the Treasury building. Um, and that was done, the vertical lift was done by in situ concrete columns, but all the beams were then pre-stressed beams. And then on top of that, we had the SP, which is the composite flooring using clay bricks and concrete.
Right.
Very interesting stuff. So I had a fair going when I was working with international. I got I worked on putting up the original Hilton. I worked there as basically a supervisor, and I worked on what was started out as the Holiday Inn, um, which has some piles under it that are 96 foot long. So you can't, so you have to drive and splice and drive and splice. It was, I got a lot of good, interesting engineering experience with international constructions. From there, I left and I worked with Miles Rothwell. Miles at the time was the leading consulting engineering firm in Barbados. And I learned a lot there, including that you have to work till 11, 12 o'clock at night to get things done because the next morning somebody had to have drawings.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked there for a year. And at the end of that, I figured, you know what? I've done my year as a contractor, I've done my year as a consultant. I can now write my thesis and get my entry to the Engineering Association. Time to move on. So I did that. Started out on my own and did all kinds of interesting things.
Okay. Can you give us that's a snapshot in terms of who were the major players in construction in that era, Mr. Bjerkhamn? You mentioned the firm International. Who were the major
International constructions.
right? So who were the engineering firms, the architects, and the contractors of that era that were of note?
Miles Rothwell, obviously, he was the biggest consulting engineering firm. David Key and Partners, they were there, and they're still, I think they're still around. Um, so we had, no, trying to stretch my mind back to that. No, I really did not get too involved with the engineering firms. I just used Miles.
Right.
Miles was a brilliant engineer. He he came up with solutions that you kick yourself round and round the block saying, now, why didn't I think of that?
Mm.
It was brilliant. It was a difficult human being. That's a nice way to put it.
The structures that you worked on, you mentioned pre-stress and post-tension. Were these some of the first structures using that technology at the time in Barbados?
Definitely. Um, we had the Hilton. The original Hilton was a precast building, assembled thing, and then we had the Holiday Inn was a pre-stressed building. A lot of the buildings at the time utilized the pre-stressed technology because it was really good. I mean, we had a building in Bridgetown that we did there that it had a beam with a clear span of 96 feet.
Well,
That was the Bank of Nova Scotia on the corner. So we did, yeah, it was really an introduction to serious engineering.
okay. Let's talk a little bit about you as the businessman. Tell us a bit about your first business venture and what drove you at that time to step out and form your own company.
Well, um, I figured working for other people was kind of like going to school and wanting to get out of school. I've never been very good at taking orders and instructions from anybody. So I figured that the best thing I could do was to start my own company, and then nobody could tell me what to do. So that's what I did. I started a construction company. My first job actually was a nice little job in Sandy Lane, where I built the cottage and swimming pool for one of the houses there. And when I worked it out, I figured, well, in construction, you do the work, you buy the materials, you pay the man, and then eventually you get your first payment, which means you have to have some money up front. Well, I had none.
Right.
So I was advised to go to the CIBC Bank and see a Mr. Anderson, which I did. So I went to Mr. Anderson and I showed him my numbers. I said, I'm going to make money on this job, but I don't have any money. So I need to get an overdraft facility of $10,000 to be able to get this job up and moving. And he looked at my numbers and he said, well, Bjorn, I hate to tell you this, but your calculations are not right. I said, oh, he said, yeah, $10,000 is not going to work. How about if I lend you 20? Oh, that's a banker.
All right.
Nowadays, we don't have bankers. Nowadays, we have, I don't know what you want to call them, but they're not bankers any longer. Merchants and money.
Mm,
I hope nobody is going to get insulted when I say that.
okay. Um, so did you find it difficult at that time to set up a company, a construction company especially? Was there a lot of competition in the market, saying that you had the requisite work experience, but obviously you were entering a market where probably there were established players. So was it difficult to set up and come into the market at that time?
Yes. We had some international companies here. We had Miller Brothers in Buckley. We had Mitchell Construction, which were big international construction companies that had set up in Barbados to work. So yes, it was not easy. Um, I kind of what I found is that a lot of these swimming pools that were built at that time didn't really stand up that well because they weren't engineered.
Mhm.
People just built them. So I became a specialist in swimming pool construction because I could engineer it. And then I moved on And I focused initially mainly on the West Coast luxury construction houses in Sandy Lane and up and down the West Coast. I did of all of those houses that built there in my first few years, I would say I built at least half of them. So it worked out very nicely.
Having said that, how important as a businessman in any sector is being able to connect to your clients, and what advice do you offer young engineers and professionals who are going into their own business ventures as it relates to having good business relations with clients and networking?
It is, I think it is of ultimate importance that you establish a good relationship with your employer. Um, I used to, when I was doing these construction jobs in Sandy Lane, I used to take and sit down with the owners sometimes for 2, 3 hours and just chat with them and so on. So if people like you, they give you work. Simple. So it was very important that you had rapport with them and so on. But also important is delivering proper, good quality or best quality work in the time that you promise and at the price that you promise. And that stood me in good stead. Um, the leading, well, there were two leading architects at that time. There was Larry Warren and Ian Morrison. And I mean, I worked for both of them, and it was a pleasure working with them, I must say. But neither one of them would accept anything less than the best, which we delivered.
Right. Okay. Having established your first business, you then started to diversify your businesses and started to branch out into such things as manufacturing, tourism, etc. Tell us a bit about what encouraged that diversification and what were some of the lessons learned along the way from undertaking such.
Well, economies rise and economies fall. We're now going through very interesting times, put it mildly. But what I figured out is that, if you are the main contractor doing high-end construction for tourism and so on, that has its downtime. So what you need to do is you need to have businesses that will pick up the slack when they fall down. So I ended up going into a lot of different businesses. One of them, actually, we're still in, is basically affordable. They call it affordable housing now. Um, we used to call it uh, low cost housing, but you're not allowed to do that any longer. You have to be nice and say affordable housing. Um, and truthfully, when the big tourist jobs slow down, somehow or the other that picked up. Um, Money was made available to people of lesser means to get mortgages and so on. Where right now in fact, we have built more affordable houses in Barbados than any other group, including the government.
Mhm.
In fact, I'm negotiating right now with the government to try to assist them in their endeavors of supplying um, a lot of affordable housing in a very short time. But we do it. I mean, it's an interesting uh, it's an interesting part of construction. You 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 have to keep your costs down, and you have to be able to. I mean, like right now, we're doing at Ridge, we are doing. So we started out with like 700 and somebody houses to do there. We've done just about half of them, and we have a problem. And the problem is that we can't build them as fast as we can sell them.
Oh,
Now, that's not a bad problem to have, but it's a problem. Um, there is a when the government tells you that there are like 20,000 people who have their names down for affordable housing in Barbados with the NHC, they're right. It is. Now, out of those 20,000, realistically, probably only about 5,000 would qualify. But 5,000 is a big number still.
mhm.
So we're doing our best to help that. And we don't make a lot of money on it, and that's the truth. But um, I came here as a little boy and ran about in Oyston's fish market, learning how to curse from baby Dulcie. And Barbados has been good to me, and I feel that in the affordable housing that we do, I'm giving back something because everybody want piece of the rock. So we're trying to make sure that as many can get piece of the rock as possible.
Okay. As a businessman, how have you dealt with failures in the past, and what has been your comeback strategy?
Uh, Sometimes, yeah, when you try to start as many companies as I have, every now and again one doesn't work, and you fall flat on your fanny, and all you can really do is pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and try to don't make those mistakes again, and go and find something else to do.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, you take when the Arawak cement plant was being built, it occurred to me that cement goes in bags. And when they started, they were importing bags from Ireland. Now, with the CARICOM Treaty, if you can get it made here, you cannot import it. So I started up a company making cement bags called Industrial Packaging. And we ended up supplying all the cement bags to Barbados and Trinidad and Jamaica. We actually, that factory ended up running, well, we ran it 6 days a week, 24 hours, and shut it down for one day to do maintenance. Now, when you are running 24 hours a day, as opposed to 8 hours, 5 days a week, your percentage of costs from your overhead costs drop to next to nothing. So it becomes an extremely useful thing to have. So, but there was that. I went into the car rental business. Tourism is the watchword. Um, God knows, I went into a lot of different businesses, but the, as you said, I had some of them where um, I was very fortunate in the people that I chose to work with me in them. And some of them I was not that fortunate in who I chose. and you learn lessons.
Okay.
I would imagine you remember that.
Yes, sir. Following on from that, how difficult is it to do business in Barbados? We've heard person said the ease of doing business in Barbados it can be very challenging. So in terms of finding financing and finding the right persons to employ, etc., how difficult has that been in your various ventures?
I'll tell you this, right now, it is extremely difficult. Unfortunately, with the COVID, the civil service went home and worked from home. And not to cry anybody down, but the productivity in our civil service dropped through the floor. And it is now trying to recover, has not recovered yet. And it is extremely difficult to deal with all the various, in what I do, I deal with banks, I deal with lawyers, I deal with town planning, I deal with the Ministry of Finance, um, I deal with all kinds of government places, and some of them are recovering. I have to tell you that, it's very sort of the thing to do to bad talk um, town planning. But I will tell you this, that in recent couple of years, town planning actually are extremely productive um, and helpful. In Barbados, a lot of the powers that be, when you come up with a new scenario, the first thing they want to tell you is why it can't work. You mentioned the zero lot line housing. When I first presented that to government, I was told you're crazy. That they're just not going to want to buy that. That's crazy. And furthermore than that, it does not comply with the town planning regulations at the time. So I will tell you what I did. I took a whole delegation from government, from all the departments that were affected, and I had a friend of mine send me down a private plane, put them all on it, flew them up to the villages in Florida, and showed them what it was and how it worked. But on the plane flying up, the person that was representing town planning told me, says, look, Mr. Bjerkhamn, I just want to tell you right now, I am going to recommend refusal because I don't believe in what you're doing. And I said, I'm going to call her name, but I said, look, why don't you wait until we're flying back down and then tell me what you think? Well, on the plane flying back down, she said, what? Man, that is the best thing out, man. I'm recommending that they allow you to do that. So sometimes you got to take the bull by the horns.
All right. Okay. Now, how important is it to have business partners, and what do you consider to be the do's and don'ts in that regard, sir?
Okay. Um, if you want to operate on a very large scale, there are only 24 hours in a day, and consequently, you need business partners either who work with you or are part of the company with you. And my theory on that was always, if I'm going to go into business with somebody, I want them to wake up in the morning and go to work for themselves, not for me. That way, every dollar that we make, and since I was the major shareholder, I got the major part of the dollar, but they still got their part. And it worked fine. Um, on 4 occasions in my life, uh, it worked fine for a number of years with people, and then it didn't work so fine, and I basically had to part company. And that is how it is.
Mhm.
But it's not now. I I have actually sold out and come out of every single company that I own together with other people. And what I've done is I'm bringing in people from my family into it, which hopefully will make life a little bit more comfortable. Um, as I say, I had 42 companies running at one time. I dropped it down to about 7, and now I'm back up to 20.
Yeah. Any do's or don'ts you want to add there?
I'll probably get locked up, and if I actually get into that,
Okay, well, let's not get you locked up, sir. Let's move along. As a businessman, how important is integrity, honesty, and vision, sir?
you cannot overemphasize it. My mother always taught me as a youngster coming up, your word is your bond. If you give somebody your word, even if you go down the road and you've given them your word to do something, and for one reason or the other, it turns out to be impossible to do it, then you go with the people and say, look, this and this has happened. I can't do that, but what can we do to make it right? But integrity is everything. And my mother taught me one other lesson, which was she always said, leap, the net will appear,
Oh,
which is, I've been doing that all my life.
mhm. Okay. What importance have you placed on the people you have employed in your businesses, and what advice do you offer in that regard?
The people who are employed, it is essential that you treat them good, like the good people that they should be or are. You also have to compensate them adequately for what they do. Nickel and diming doesn't work. Um, you've seen it done elsewhere, and it does not work. But you have to compensate people well. Um, and again, integrity is the watchword. You can't give people your word on something and then go back on it. No, that's just a no-no.
Mhm.
And I mean, I there, I mean, as I said, I have sold out of all the businesses that I was in. I have come out of them and then started up new again. And it's been some of them, the parting of the ways was very difficult and very litigious. And in some of them, I I can tell you that, I went and I had lunch with Mark Maloney. I had lunch with him on a regular basis for about 3 months, negotiating, him buying over. the companies that I had started and brought him into that he was now wanting to take up. And I said, okay, fine, you take them up. And we came to a good deal that way. It's not always that easy that you can sit down and come to a reasonable exit. I sold out from my American partners. Again, I'm in another 4 or 5 months, I'm going to be 80 years old. And while I am firmly convinced that I'm really never going to die, but in case I'm wrong, you need to tidy up stuff.
Right. Fair enough. What advantage has being an engineer given you in business?
Vincent, I'll tell you, engineers are a breed apart. What we really are, forget the technical things that we think and so on, because when we were at university, we had to remember the formula to put steel in a beam and the formula for this and a formula for that. Nowadays, you have a phone and you look it up and done. You don't have to remember anything. What engineers are taught is that we are problem solvers, and there is a sequence that you go through. You have to go and get all your information. When you get your information together, you then look at the information and see what can be done with it. And anyway, at the end of the day, we engineers are taught to solve problems by going one step, two steps, three steps, building your solutions. And honestly, I live my life by that. Personal, business, everything, because it works. We are problem solvers. That's what we are.
Fantastic. All right, we come into the last section of questions here for you. This is pertaining to advice and looking forward. You have made valuable contributions to the development of Barbados in several sectors during a long and successful career as an engineer and businessman. Where would you like to see us as a nation collectively reach within the next 20 years?
Collectively see us as a nation where realistically, tourism is our business. It has always been our business. It would be good, like places like Preconco and so on that are manufacturing thing. And quite frankly, Preconco is one of the leading manufacturers of precast, pre-stressed concrete in the world today, not only in the Caribbean. I would like to see us do a bit more in manufacturing. I would like to see that the financial help that people need in the beginning, as I told you, the man looked at me and said, well, no, $10,000 ain't gonna do it. Let me give you 20. I was lucky.
Right.
The banks nowadays, the banks are very difficult to deal with, and that's the truth. They're over brimming with money, but they make it very difficult to access it unless, well, how to put it? If you have a very good reputation and you probably actually don't need the money, then it's easy to get. But otherwise than that, if you're sort of trying to build up your reputation and you're trying to build up a business, it's not easy to get.
Mhm.
I've seen it over and over again. And the banks are not easy to deal with.
Mhm. In your opinion, how does Barbados need to position itself going forward to remain competitive in both the tourism and the manufacturing sector that you mentioned?
Okay, so what is happening right now in tourism actually is that a lot of the older properties that need refurbishing and so on, some of them are being done. Um, there, I tend to build new. Um, I'm, I just finished one in Roadview there. Um, well, we're finishing it this week, and that was 21 apartments, and we're now finishing it, and we have 3 left to sell. On the other hand, the real estate pundits have the used the our reputation, and we're the most experienced developers in the country, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it gives people confidence um, that you're gonna deliver what you say you're gonna deliver, and we're doing it, obviously. Um, and I have 3 other developments right now that are with the architects and so on are being planned. So I think that getting new product is good. Um, Refurbishing old product is good. If we ever get the sandals to come and do the property down by Spikes Down, I don't know how they're doing. I mean, well, Butch passed on, and his son Adam is now in charge, and I get the impression that they're working towards getting a start there. I don't know. I know there were issues with the government as to what they would get and what they wouldn't get as concessions. Um, I don't know what to tell you. It's you can only, I guess, you can only stretch so far, and after that, you gotta put your foot down.
Mhm.
And our prime minister doesn't hesitate to put her foot down at all.
Right.
She's extremely, um, she's doing a good job. Um, so I think that what we need to do is the tourism needs to keep being renewed. Manufacturing needs to be encouraged and given the fiscal encouragement from government. Um, at the end of the day, when you do big projects and so on in Barbados, you depend tremendously on cooperation from government in their various areas. And some of them are a lot better at giving you help than others. And I think the ones that are not so good really need to understand that there's there I mean, like, I have seen people come to Barbados to start a business and got so frustrated that they picked themselves up and went off,
Mhm.
gone to the Seychelles or somewhere like that, or Hong Kong or wherever where it's easier. Um, I'm sure you know about that too. I'm
Sure.
sure everybody that's listening knows about that, but that's a fact.
Mhm.
And You know, what what the powers that be need to understand is that when somebody comes to you with something, the first thing out of your mouth is, "Not, I can't work." No, it should not be that. What it should be is, right. That's not exactly right, but how can we make it work? And that is the attitude that we need to come from the various government agencies. And there are some that actually give it right now, and there are some that don't.
In terms of ease of doing business and starting up new businesses, do we need then to have a more coordinated effort on the part of government to make that whole process a lot more seamless so that you're not jumping
100%.
from place to place to place to get things done?
100%. I think that they're the current government is um, is doing something on that line, because what they've done is they have put what they call senior ministers in place who are who actually work with people who are coming here to invest and do stuff in Barbados. And I think that they're helping them to overcome some of the roadblocks that are put up.
Mhm. Okay.
And it needs more of that, really.
Yeah.
It needs you should go to a one-stop shop. You know, we had it at one time. Um, when Arthur did it, what Owen did, he had a guy, and I won't call his name, but he had a guy who basically his job was to cut through red tape. When you were trying to set things up and you hit a roadblock, he went and unblocked the road. He didn't give you got nothing that you weren't supposed to get. But you know the old Bajan, most business people in Barbados would understand that if I say that somebody has to walk the file,
Yeah.
and you need people to walk the file.
Okay. What advice do you offer to young persons who are looking to pursue a degree in engineering and those who may be about to venture into their careers as engineers?
As I said, engineers make the best managers of any business because of they are trained problem solvers, and business is solving problems. Every day you have problems you have to solve. And being an engineer, by far the best managers are engineers because of that. And it's all comes out of your engineering training. I would say that, you know, if you're an engineer and there's no engineering position available for you as a young engineer, go and get a business employment, and you will be surprised. You will rise in the ranks in a hurry, and you may or may not. I mean, honestly, I haven't done serious engineering for a few years, but I employ engineers.
Mhm.
I employ engineers to work in the companies, and then I employ engineers as consultants because of of that. They're just very good at doing stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Bjerkhamn, how important is work-life balance and family to today's professional?
Boy, it is. I think both things are very important. Your work life is important from the point of view that that is how you make a living, and also it is where you probably get the most satisfaction in your day-to-day life. Uh, family is yeah, well, I can tell you, my family is the most important thing in my life. I, I, you need to, and I don't, and I'm a culprit. I don't spend as much family time as I probably should. I spend a lot of time at work. I mean, I still put in 10 hours a day. Um, and, sometimes when you come home from 10 hours a day, you're tired.
Mm.
And so, but it is important. Your family life is very important to your mental state. Because if things miserable at home, you're not going to come to work with a good mind.
Yeah. I kind of remember from doing some work for you some years ago, you had the adage, um, happy wife, happy life.
That's right. That still goes today.
All right. The last question I have for you, sir, before we open up, are there any dreams still for Bjorn Bjerkhamn to achieve as a businessman and engineer in Barbados?
Absolutely. Um, I'm always looking for new opportunities and new ventures to get into that I can put my talent to getting it done and helping helping other people, because at the end of the day, that also is very important. Um, yes, there is. I'm always looking for new opportunities. As I say, I went from 42 down to like 2 or 3, and I'm back up to close to 20. And back to life. If you have an active mind, opportunities present themselves, and you have to have the balls to just go and do it. Leap, the net will appear.
Fair enough. Okay, Engineer Bjerkhamn, thank you so much for being so transparent, being so honest, and being so easy to chat with. I now want to take this opportunity to open up to our audience who could take to ask some questions of you, to glean from your knowledge and your wisdom. So you can either put a question in the chat or you can raise your hand, and I'm quite happy to let you ask Mr. Bjerkhamn the question directly. So don't be shy. Mr. Bjerkhamn, well, we wait on persons because I've asked a lot of questions, so perhaps I've asked some questions that others had. Is there something called retirement for Mr. Bjerkhamn?
Yes, it's called um, 6 feet under.
Fair enough. I have a question from Engineer Andrew Hutchinson. Andrew, please unmute.
Sure, Vincent. Bjorn, welcome to the discussion. I listened with very great interest in your presentation. I want to focus on when Mr. Lafrey came here, and I think he was the pioneer for the Suntec Quest development, right?
Yes, he had international construction.
Oh, he had that too.
He
Oh, yeah.
had Yeah, he had international construction, and he had building supplies at the time.
Right.
And then he did a deal with the BS&T, who owned it at the time. And he did a joint venture deal with them where they developed the land and he built the houses. Before that there were like 5 houses that were called Karikana.
Yeah.
That they tried to do there. I actually lived in one of them for a short time. But then he persuaded the others he persuaded BS&T that it was a good opportunity for everybody to do well out of it, and they did.
But that at the time, that was a massive subdivision, that really made Old Town take off.
Of course.
Yeah, that was quite I mean, there were hundreds of houses there. I mean,
They still are.
And then hand in hand with that, he brought the SB floor ribbon pot system here, right?
Correct. That was building supplies.
Right. That came out of Italy or somewhere, I think it was.
Venezuela.
It was very clever because it used the local clay, which we have a lot of. And I thought it was a very smart idea for that era.
Well, he spent a lot of time in Venezuela before he came here. And in Venezuela at the time, the bulk of construction was clay, not concrete blocks. It was clay blocks, and they use the SP system.
I think I've often thought it's unfortunate that it's still not in use today, but I guess times change and everything changed. But I found it was quite a useful, efficient system. A little bit of manual labor, you could put it out. You didn't have to have cranes and so, you know.
That's right.
And we had the clay. It was using our local materials. I thought that was a great idea. I don't know what killed it, but
I think what killed it was Omnia.
Omnia came. Yeah. Well, that was my question for now. He was involved. He set up international construction as well, right?
Yeah, well, that was his first thing he set up here was international constructions. And then using international constructions, he then persuaded the BS&T people, because they were shareholders in building supplies, which was then the clay operation and all of that. So that when you have all that, like precast and pre-stressed beams and so on, you have to span it with something. So that is how that all came about.
Yeah. I was introduced to it when I joined Miles in 1971, Miles Rothwell, and one of the first assignments he gave me was to rework all the span load tables for the SB system.
There you go.
So I cut my teeth on it and knew all about it. But I'm really concerned that many of our engineers today, the younger crop over the last 20 years, probably don't even know what it is. But such is life.
Yeah. The clay factory is done. They shut it down.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. All right. Well, I wish you more success as the years go by.
Thank you. Same to you.
Sure. Bye-bye.
You're on mute, Vincent.
Thank you, Colonel. Engineer Ashby, you can unmute and answer your question.
Thank you, sir. And first of all, let me say what a good job you've been doing, Vincent. But also thanks to Mr. Bjerkhamn for, as you said, Vincent, being so open and transparent and so on. So my question really is centered around the really amazing career and the experiences that Mr. Bjerkhamn has shared. And having accomplished so much, the competencies that you obviously have to have been so successful, I wonder about the mentorship that you might have engaged in to inspire and promote other younger people across the years, such that they might be in a position to themselves achieve what they are capable of. So you mentioned some partners, and in some cases, some that didn't go so well and so on. But beyond the partnership where those people might have brought in a considerable amount of resources and so on themselves, I'm thinking about efforts that you might have made over the years to empower different groups of people as we now try to be more inclusive and so on in our society. How have you thought about your approach over the years to mentoring and developing another generation of leaders like yourself to be successful in business? So that's it. Hope that's clear. Thanks.
Well, we've we over the years we have obviously employed a lot of very talented, very bright young people, and we've encouraged them to educate themselves as far as they can, and also to gain the experience in the areas that they operate in. And we've had, obviously, I mean, before the COVID thing came along, I mean, we were by far the largest employer in Barbados after the government. The government employed about 25,000 people, but we employed 4,000 people, which was in private capacity. I don't think anybody ever employed that many people in Barbados before. But that now, as I say, with my divesting and so on, what I'm doing right now is I'm bringing young people in and training them and teaching them as much as I can on how to run businesses and how to develop stuff, buildings, etc.
Right, Mr. Bjerkhamn, I have a question in the chat. Someone is asking, at what age did you go on your own in terms of business, sir?
I would have been 22.
Wow, 22. Okay. All right. Now, when I did the introduction for you, I noted that you would have been involved or sat on the board of the Barbados Central Bank. I'm not sure how many of our engineers have had that opportunity. What was that experience like for you, and what level of expertise were you able to bring to the table in that regard?
It was very interesting. I sat on the board for 5 years as a director, and I was one of the few people who was not basically a government person on it. There were 2 others or 3 others with me that were not. And I found it very interesting because the central bank, they govern how our fiscal, or they did, how our fiscal future was. And you know, the minister of finance at the time came and asked me if I would sit on the board, and I did. I sat on the board. At times, I must say that my way of doing it was different. Again, I'm an engineer. I apply engineering to whatever I do. And I must say that there were certain areas that in my time there that I probably upset people by giving them my point of view on what needed to be done in the economy and so on. And I can remember getting a call 10 o'clock one night, and I was told that you go inside there and you frighten up the people by telling them all of this thing. I said, but hold on, I didn't tell him nothing that wasn't so, you know. So, but it was very interesting indeed, and I actually felt very honored that they would ask me to do that, and I enjoyed the 5 years on the board. I, as I say, my way of looking at it, I was not an economist. I was not a government high up. I was an engineer. And
Fantastic.
so I enjoyed it, and I must say, it was 5 good years.
Okay. Question in the chat for you, sir. Which was Engineers Bjerkham's most challenging project and why? And was there ever a project that you would have started that didn't materialize?
My most challenging project was Port St. Charles because the idea of going inland and putting a marina where land was kind of new. And the technical side of it was very difficult. I know that when I put it into the government to get the permissions to do it, every government agency had a reason why it shouldn't be allowed. I was going to destroy the water table. I was going to destroy the fisheries. It was on and on and on. And I will say that the Prime Minister of the day was very, very brave in what he did, because he called a meeting in the cabinet room with representing each and every government department, and he went around the table and he said, right, what is your recommendation on the application that they have put in? And they told him, well, this was the thing, and they recommended refusal because of these reasons. Well, all the time they were talking, I was taking notes. And I went around the table, and then he came and he said, okay, what do you have to say? And I said, well, every negative reason that has been brought up here can be mitigated one way or the other. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, let me go through one at a time. So I went through one at a time, and I said, this can be mitigated by that, that can be mitigated by that. I went right around the table, and he looked at the chief town planner of the day, and he says, right. He says, issue permission, make every mitigation a condition. And the rest of it is history. Port St. Charles happened.
Okay. And the second part of the question, any projects that have never materialized that was started?
Not that started, no. I've
Okay.
never started anything that I didn't finish. I have had some that fall flat on the tail before I could get them going, yes.
Okay. Another question from one of our young engineers. He wanted to know, what advice would you have for a young engineer now venturing out into business on their own? And what are your key principles for success?
There are 5 key principles for success. And it goes like this: work hard, work hard, work hard, work hard, work hard. Simple. My thing has always been that when I've embarked on something and it's not going how it should go, I figure, well, I'm not working at it hard enough, so I got to work harder to make it work. Hard work, there's no substitute for hard work, none. The best advice I can give you is would be good to work for a while, like I did with International Constructions and Miles, where you can accumulate knowledge from people who are very good at what they do, and you can learn from them. And then eventually, if you want to start on your own, use what you've learned and leap, the net will appear.
Fantastic. All right, we have one moment for one last question. Is there anyone who wants to ask one last question before we close tonight's session? All right, Mr. Ian Clark, you can go ahead.
Yes, good night. Good night, Vincent. Good night, Mr. Bjerkhamn, and to the other participants. My question is, you mentioned you like to see more manufacturing happen in Barbados. Would you like to elaborate on what direction you will see that manufacturing take?
Honestly, well, I've been in manufacturing for donkey's years. As I say, I manufactured bags for cement, bags for flour, all that kind of stuff. Briconco is a manufacturing operation. Quarries, I operated quarries, and that is a manufacturing operation. What needs to be done is you need to look and see what is it that Barbados needs, either for its own population or to service the population of people that come here to invest. I don't have anything right to tell you right now, Ian. The long and the short is, if I did have an idea like that, I would have started it.
All right. The last question we're going to take, I saw Mr. Brown put up his hand just before we close. So, Luis, could you go ahead and answer your question, please? You're muted, sir. You have to unmute. Mr. Brown, you have to unmute.
Okay. Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Right. My name is Lou Brown. I actually live in Texas and Barbados. I'm in Texas currently. But Bjorn and I sat next to each other at law school. When he said that he would be 80 in what, 5 months, I knew that because we have the same birthday. I don't know if he remembers that or not, but we used to hang out a lot at lunch together. I just wanted to see what you look like. That's mainly it. So I'm not an engineer or anything. I happen to be someone in the, but I did get the notice on the law school chat, and I just wanted to see. So I wanted to say hello. I'll be in Barbados next week. I was just there a month ago. I saw that's it. Maybe if I'm there, maybe I'll visit you. I don't know if where you.
That'd be great. That'd be great. I tell you what,
Right.
law school days were good days.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But they confused us a lot because your name came right before mine, so there was always confusion when they went to the rest.
Don't feel bad. There's
Right.
actually 12 people alive in the world today with my name.
Wow.
Only 12.
I've actually seen it pop up. I'm actually a consul for the honorary consul for Barbados in Texas, and
Okay.
right. So I think it was the Norwegian consul at the time had your last name. Mm-hmm.
Well, I tell you, there are only 12 of us alive with that name.
Okay. Or maybe it was one of them.
When I was born a Johannesson. And
Right.
then my parents changed the name to Bjerkhamn, and that was a completely made up name.
Wow.
So there you go.
Yeah. He was the consul general here in for Texas. This is several years ago, but I did
Okay.
recall. Yeah.
Right,
Small
Mr.
world.
Bjerkhamn.
Yeah.
Small world.
Fantastic.
Right.
So, Louis, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. And
Yes,
thank you for your
right.
question. Okay.
Right. And I'll be in touch with you this week so we can chat for a minute, Bjorn.
Great.
All righty. Good.
Okay.
Take care,
Okay,
everybody.
ladies and gentlemen,
Take care.
I really want to thank you, Mr. Bjerkhamn, for staying at work, because I know that's where you're doing the interview and entertaining this session tonight. I want to give you thanks for that, and obviously thanks to Rain as well, who's been helping to set up this interview. We really want to express our thanks to the wisdom and the candor in which you shared that wisdom with us this afternoon. I hope persons were able to take some notes and to really give some thought to some of the things that you have mentioned, especially that leap and the net will appear, because I think in Barbados, we do tend to be very timid when it comes to taking risks sometimes. So we really want to extend thanks to you, sir, for coming out tonight and availing us with your wisdom.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Guys, I just want to remind you before we close the session, our annual dinner is going to be December 2nd, and it's going to be held at the Sandbars Castle this year. So we do ask that you start to think about booking some tickets, booking a table for the event. And if you so wish to do, you can also look at sponsoring, being one of our sponsors for this event. We want to thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar session. I want to bid you all a good night.
Good night.